Why is fragrance so important to me? I'm going to tell you why coming up next. Welcome back, everybody, to Joel the Nose. And as you can see, I am here still in LA, Los Angeles. And today I wanted to tell a story, a real story, about why fragrance means so much to me. I think that sometimes as reviewers and all of us as fragrance lovers get caught up in, when we're watching videos or talking about fragrance, we get literally caught up in what fragrance has this specific note, or is it a top note, or is it a fougere, or is it a summer fragrance? And we get really, I think, kind of focused in on the weeds, and we lose, again, as the old saying goes, the forest through the trees. And what I want to kind of refocus on this video and start doing some more videos like this is about storytelling and why fragrance means so much to each of us. And storytelling to me is the best way to do it, because storytelling relates basically our world and our past and our future, and it makes sense of things, right? When we tell stories and how it relates into our life. And for me, that's what I wanted to do with specifically fragrance today, and one of the reasons why it is so important in my life. And it is, first and foremost, one of the connections to my dad. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and my dad was a classic kind of Midwestern father from Ohio, middle class, had his own business, worked so hard, had his own insurance agency, and he idolized certain things from, I guess, the classic men's fashion world, specifically Brooks Brothers. Brooks Brothers, I believe, was the original American men's fashion house, started in the late 1800s in New York. And it just epitomized, I think in the 60s and 70s, men's kind of Wall Street, New York, high business fashion. To have a Brooks Brothers suit, a shirt, a tie, that was like almost like meant you had arrived and you knew how to wear a power suit. And my dad didn't have a ton of it, but he had a few suits and shirts and ties from Brooks Brothers and shoes. And I'll never forget watching him as a kid, a little boy in the 70s, just idolizing my dad and the man that he was, and watching him get dressed in his ties and his suits and his fragrance, his cologne, and all of that now reminds me of my dad. And just a quick aside about Brooks Brothers. Did you know that Ralph Lauren, the famous Ralph Lauren American fashion designer, started at Brooks Brothers in the 60s? He was a tie salesman. Yeah, he worked in New York there, and he actually launched his own line or collection of ties on the side, and that's how he got started, was by making ties that he learned to do from Brooks Brothers. So this is iconic Americana. And so I want to tell a story. About 2 years ago, I found in TJ Maxx, I'm pulling up a picture here, of this bottle of Brooks Brothers fragrance. It's an EDT kind of cologne style fragrance, and it's called Brooks Brothers New York. It's a deep purple with a gold cap, 100 milliliter bottle. I found it for $15, okay? $15 at like TJ Maxx. And it was a throwaway. It's discontinued. I think it came out maybe 15 years ago, roughly. But it's this kind of citrusy, soapy barbershop fougere that reminds me of my dad. It reminds me of the classic men's fragrances from the 70s that he would wear, almost like an Ubicant fougere or Ubicant Royale. It just reminds me again of that just classic men's soapy, fresh citrus fragrance that just is very masculine and clean and invigorating. And this takes me back to my dad. And what is the real thing it does for me, this fragrance? This cheap $15 fragrance that in the eyes of the world was discontinued, was sent to a secondhand store, a retailer. And by the way, I found the last one at the store in a box that was opened. I had to like debate whether I wanted to buy it because I'm opening it, the box was open, it was damaged. I'm like finding this, but it immediately transported back to looking up at my dad as a little boy, watching him, learning from him, learning lessons of life, of respect, of hard work, of faith, of dedication, of family. And why is it so important for me? because I can't do that anymore. My dad passed away, unfortunately, 12 years ago. In my early 40s, I lost my father. I lost him at a really young age. And to kind of be a man and a father at this point in my life, to not have your father there as a guide, as a mentor anymore, to just lean on, to talk to about life's lessons, it's hard sometimes. But this fragrance and things like this help me. They bring me back. They transport me back to when I spray this fragrance on, this cheap, throwaway, discontinued Brooks Brothers fragrance, I think of my dad, and it literally transports me back to these lessons I learned as a child watching my dad, and it just is unbelievable. So that's what fragrance does for me. And I wanted to tell that story, and I want to hear your guys' stories. I want to hear similar stories. Please, I love when you guys kind of kick into the comments and give me stuff, and we can all talk about. I want to hear stories specifically regarding a fragrance that takes you back to a parent, a father, a mother, maybe a grandparent, a family member, something in your life that when you put it on now or you smell it, you immediately get transported back and remind you of that time, because that's one of the things that fragrance does. Fragrance is passion, it's art, right? Words can't adequately describe how we feel about fragrance. The sense of smell is not like sight, where you can say, hey, I see a car, I see a bus, I see a tree. Smell is different. We don't have adequate words to really express how we're feeling. Stories are the best way that I know. And telling a story and of reminding me of my dad and bringing me back is the best way that I can tell how fragrance affects me. So there you have it. This is JoelTheNose. Thank you guys for watching, of course, as always. And I can't wait to hear your guys' stories. Peace and love.